Hi, I'm Brian Rowe, and I'm very thrilled today to welcome Florian Hoffmeister to my YouTube channel. He is, of course, the Oscar-nominated cinematographer of my favorite film of 2022, Tar. Thanks so much for being here, Florian.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. It's a pleasure.
I wanted to start by just congratulating you on your Oscar nomination. Where were you on January 24th, and what was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, it's actually a funny story because I'm currently in Iceland, where I'm shooting a new installment for True Detective, and I thought they would be published. The results would be published at night, my night. So I woke up and we were shooting nights, and I thought like, oh, in the middle of my shooting day, I either get a text message or I don't. And then it was it's my morning, and suddenly my phone rang, and somebody from Germany called and just yelled on the phone, "It's happening, it's happening!" And I had no idea what they were talking about. And then suddenly my phone fell apart. So I truly didn't expect it, and it was actually was a really nice surprise.
So this is your first Oscar nomination. What does the nomination mean to you?
Well, I mean, it's a gigantic honor. That's yeah, it goes without saying. The entire, it's the first time I do something like what they call the award season because, we won or I won the Golden Frog at Camera Image, and when that happened, then suddenly people, think, oh, you're on the radar. So it's been a bit of a for lack of better words, a campaign. And in all honesty, I try to live by the saying. It's a quote from Bela Bartok, the Hungarian composer, who supposedly has said, competition is for horses, not for artists. So it's like it's a in itself a bit a conundrum, because in a way you don't want to compete, because I think we all deserve, anybody who tries to make something and make a film deserves a prize, if you ask me. But then once you start engaging with it, obviously it becomes a recognition, and then it's just a very complex situation. It's a gigantic honor.
I'm just so thrilled for you because I really think this is a beautifully shot movie. And it's not maybe the most obvious choice for an
Mm.
Oscar nomination, right? But what you're doing in this movie, I think, is so striking on a visual level. I'd love to go back to the beginning, just if you could talk about kind of how this project came to you and what kind of preparation you did with Todd Field to get the look right for Tar.
Yeah, it was we hit the ground pretty much running, I have to admit. So it was in 2021. Yeah, 2021. Yeah. I just came back from Canada, where I shot this. I had finished this Apple series called Pachinko, and Todd had contacted me. We had one telephone call. I also have to say I'm an absolute fan of his work. So I when I had the chance, and we were introduced, he could have also um, given me the telephone directory of New York City to film. I was there. I was ready to take the call. So we had spoken a couple of times, and I'd read the script. And then when we finally met for the first time, that was in July, we were right there, and we started prep, and I had about 9 weeks. And because most of it was shot on location, that meant that, there wasn't really a time to slowly start getting to know each other. It was full on from the start. So when I read the script, I noticed, two things kind of stood out to me. The first was it was beautifully written, but it spoke of a high degree of inside knowledge of the world of music, which was completely foreign to me. So it felt very authentic and very rich in its research and in all the details it could speak of. And secondly, there was a bit of a feeling of that actually something else was going on. But it wasn't really, that wasn't achieved by any kind of plot points. It just very slowly grew on you whilst reading that actually this wasn't only about music, but it was about something else. So when we first spoke and when we started to work with each other, in my world, that authenticity that the script spoke of, it was, is transferred into the world of visuals. It would be authenticity of space. Like every image, it had to be absolutely believable. Mm-hmm. And it had to be very immersive and very real. So I tried to avoid any kind of photographic texture that would be like a filter between us and the image, mm-hmm. us as being the audience. And the observing element, the form of detachment that was already apparent in the script, I think that was by choosing a camera that is almost like fly on the wall, is watching, tries not to lean into any other way. You could have easily come up with a visual language that would have pushed the audience into, this is a story about power, or this is a story about, dissecting the character differently. And I think by holding back, we really wanted the audience to be able to project their own discoveries and their own projections into the film. And, coming back to your first question, mm-hmm. Obviously, sometimes it's really difficult to do something simple. Some of the shots, even though they were just single setups, were quite technically difficult to achieve. But to go on a journey where we developed a visual language that is so, speaks of a form of restraint, and to be recognized for that with the Oscar nomination, that obviously, really honest, it's a real honor and excites me.
So I do have to ask you about the Juilliard scene, because it is one stunning shot. It's probably my favorite shot of any movie last year. I would love for you to break it down for me, Florian. Like, how was that shot achieved? How many days of rehearsal did you have to do with Todd Field, with Cate Blanchett? And I mean, towards the end of the shot, the camera's going up the steps, tracking along with her. And we're on like minute 7 of her talking, and it's really extraordinary. Can you talk about that shot?
Yeah, I actually rewatched parts of the film yesterday because I had to choose a little segment for the nomination. And I somehow stumbled into that sequence, and I was actually amazed myself because I hadn't seen it in a long time. Thought, oh, this really goes on. No, the process was actually was there from the start. So it was the first week of location scouting, and Todd had obviously been in contact with the production designer Marco Bittner-Rosser very early, and they had exchanged pictures digitally, and he had already chosen that place. So in my first week with him, we went to that place, and I knew, okay, this is going to be the location for Juilliard. And whilst we were sitting there, Todd said, oh, you know what? I think we should do this sequence in one shot. And I immediately jumped at that because, at that time, we would have, or you will have watched about 15 minutes of the film, maybe a little less, which, consists of the first exposition at the Alice Tully Hall with Adam Gopnik, and then the dinner or lunch she has with her benefactor, Elliot Kaplan. So you basically see two people always seated and people always speaking. And it will be a cross angle situation and two shots, but a very static visual experience. So when Todd said, let's do this in one, I thought, I jumped at the opportunity. I thought, this is genius. Let's do this. Let's pull this off. I remember that we were sitting in the car, and he called Cate. Obviously this would create a gigantic challenge for her, and he just wanted to, let her know. And as far as I recall, right, she said, yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. But what about the knee? Because in the scene, there was a very detailed description of the student having this nervous tic, and how she, as in Lydia Tarr, gets agitated by that. So we sat down and we kind of broke the scene down. How would we shoot it if we had single camera setups, and we kind of came up with, say, roughly 30 different setups. You wanted to be wide, you wanted to see the students listening, you wanted to feature the other student, you want to feature the knee, you wanted to be close with her at the piano. So it was, the idea was not to just show a muscular piece of filmmaking by saying we pull this off in one shot just for the pure sake of movement, but because Todd always said it very beautifully, he wanted to give Cate editorial power. So in essence, Cate takes us as in the character through those different shots, and that kind of creates this sensation that you don't really realize it's a one shot, because it actually feels like that the camera is always in the right position for a regularly broken down scene. So that was the ambition. I think I did a lot of visits to that place, trying to choose the tool that would enable us to do that. We ruled out the Steadicam, because the Steadicam is a slightly, has a scent of predictability. I could see that as an audience, you're so mature, you see the Steadicam taking off and okay, settled back into, one-shot wonderland. So Steadicam was an option, and we wanted to do a crane, but we couldn't get it in there. And there's all kinds of other things that I entertained. But in the end, we decided to go with a rig that, in a way, it wasn't not technically the same, but stuff that was Roger Deakins used extensively in 1917, which is basically you have a stabilized camera that's being hand carried by grips. And then we to prove the point, we did a little rehearsal, and Todd absolutely loved the precision of it. And then we had a day, I think, where we just worked out the movements for ourselves. Then we had a day where we rehearsed it with Cate, and then we had a day to shoot it, and it was actually and I've told this before, but it's still quite unbelievable, because it was like at the movies. So the first take was absolutely beautiful. Her performance to me still, is breathtaking. Not only does she deliver all these thoughts and the beautiful writing, no, she also plays piano, and she not only plays piano, she acts how she plays the piano. So fascinating performance. And we were all sitting there, with white knuckles, and it was literally in the last 10 seconds of that. The first take was perfect. In the last 10 seconds, we had a technical slip.
Oh my God.
And then we had to go again, and we went, I think, 12 times then till we finally got it.
So if it had been perfect that first time, would you guys have just said we're good, or would you have done a second take?
I think both. Cate, of course, is a perfectionist, and as is Todd. We probably would have gone another couple times, realizing that, oh no, actually the first one was the best. We might have stopped earlier, but also to credit, or to do justice to the privilege it is working with both of them. There's like, once they commit to something, or we had committed as a team to this idea, there was no, it was clear we had to go on. There's Cate is a filmmaker in her own sense. There's nobody to blame. Let's just do it again, and then obviously then there's, the difficult bit with the piano playing. So we had to do a couple of takes where she didn't get through that. We had to do again, simply because she just misplayed, There's no trickery to this. It's all her performance is absolutely live. It's never that we thought, somebody, you can see her hands, he put something else on there. She really did play this.
I think it helps to have Cate Blanchett, right? In front of the camera.
She is absolutely amazing. She is. And the thing that, because she is such a, she is a filmmaker in her own right, she has a very holistic approach to the entire scenario. So that makes that possible in a way, stuff like that.
I wanted to ask you about, working with Cate Blanchett on this project. When you have someone like her of that talent, of that stature, does it make your job easier? Or is there like some added pressure on you in a way? Like, I need to deliver at the highest level here.
Yeah, it's a combination of both.
Okay.
I think in this particular case, because some of our coverage was so limited, or saying the shots would last such a long time, that of course means that the shot really has to sustain the screen and has to be able to live up there. Other scenes, for example, there's this beautiful scene between Sebastian, the concert master, that's the guy she fires.
Right.
And she enters his office and they have this long chat, and it just hangs back in this wide shot. So, the lighting has to really be able to live up on that screen for that long, and you have to be able to have a pleasing viewing experience for all the stages that she walks through, as a character in a single shot. So there is a heightened, I would say there was, obviously there's pressure. But that always happens, when you work with people that are very serious and very, very talented, they just push the bar, for everybody. So it's a pleasure, absolutely, because you can just sit there and go, wow. But it's also, you have to come up, you have to deliver as well.
Yeah, as you say, I was struck by so many scenes in this movie that don't seem to have a lot of coverage. A lot of long shots later on of talking where maybe we go from one person to the other, but it's not like you're gathering 15 different shots of coverage for a lot of these scenes, right? Did you and Todd Field decide we're just going to shoot this from 2 angles or 3 angles and call it a day? I feel like that's the sense I got for most of the scenes in this movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's right. It was 90% or 99% of these things were decided as such. It was very clear, because we wanted to do, and a good example is, for example, the scene in the car where Lydia, or where Sharon, her partner, kind of has the first real quarrel and almost breaks up, and Lydia throws her out of the car. For example, so it was clear Todd picked a location that he really loved, which is a roundabout in the center of East Berlin. So it's really hard to block that off. So from production, we heard we can only do it on a Sunday for 2 hours in the morning, okay, there's a time limitation. So we said, okay, we've got 2 hours. We definitely want to do it in that roundabout. So where do we want to place the cameras? And then it's quite clear, well, actually, if you think about it, you only want to place the camera in the car. You want to be traveling with that. So then we choose, okay, we actually got the car down and we pre-rigged a couple of angles, and I had Todd take a look at them. And it was clear, okay, there's this master angle, which is kind of over shoulder Lydia. You see Sharon, but you also see Lydia's face in the rearview mirror. Then they went out on a weekend, because then with that decision in mind, it was clear the stunt, she had to drive herself, and the stunt had to be understandable so that you actually feel she's almost hitting a car. So they went out into a similar roundabout and practiced, with the stunt driving team. If Cate could pull that off. She loves to drive, and she loves to drive fast. So that was a good, starting place. And then we shot it in those 2 hours exactly with 2 cameras in the car. In the film, he only uses one, the main camera. And then we added one little camera, which I think he also uses when she gets dropped off, which was outside the car. So those were our 3 angles, and those were the 2 hours. In a different production with a different mindset, you could have said, well, we're going to shoot out the main action in those 2 hours. We have a second unit that will do all the car stuff then the weekend following or something. And we have maybe, because it's a car accident, we have 15 different angles. So the process of that reductionist process, that was really driving us the entire time. The orchestra was the complete opposite.
Right.
The orchestra we shot, in the first day, I think we shot something like 90 setups. It was just crazy. We had like 4 cameras. We were just going through the orchestra. So to me, it always felt like expansion and then contraction again, expansion and contraction.
Right. Something else I wanted to ask you about was the use of darkness in the movie. There's a lot of scenes of like Lydia waking up in the middle of the night, going into the kitchen to investigate a strange noise. There's that extremely creepy scene of her going into that basement of the apartment building where she sees like this giant dog across the way and starts running. Like, what is the challenge for you in kind of lighting these extremely dark moments throughout the movie?
Yeah, I love that. That's a real passion. I really, I love the light at night that we all experience when you open our eyes and there is no light, but there seems to be some light. And I've always been fascinated by that from day one. So, the key for me is obviously a form of subconscious visibility, especially in the bed scenes where she wakes up, that you can just about see, the eyes, or you get a feel of her profile, and that when she gets up and she walks, you have a sensation of space, and us traveling through space. Those were challenging, but for a cinematographer, those are really fun moments, because the breakdown was so precise and known, you can really light that. You can hide sources and and hang stuff, and the stuff down in the basement. That was actually an interesting situation, because I live in Berlin, but I hadn't shot there in 15 years. I actually, in the first conversation, I haven't really said that before, but I actually said to Todd, "Why do you want to shoot this in Berlin?" Because I felt Berlin is quite a hard place to photograph. Other than other cities like London and New York are very iconic. Berlin lacks that a little bit, and it was a real interesting experience to revisit the place where I live through the eyes of Todd, who was really in love with Berlin, and we visited a particular rundown factory from the east that was still closed, and we walked the basement, and the basement looked exactly like that. It's like no dressing. He said, "Oh, we have to shoot it here," so. And then obviously you come up with ideas where you can hide little lights so that when she turns around, she still gets a glint in the eye, and and all that stuff. But that place looked exactly like that. And I think Todd really managed to, we managed to get a kind of a portrait of Berlin back together. I think it really speaks of the city.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also really taken in this movie, Florian, with how you visually represent Krista in the movie. Lydia's former protege who commits suicide later in the film. We see a little bit of her. I watched the movie again yesterday, and we see a little bit of her from the back, almost out of focus. You see her red hair twice in the opening 15 to 20 minutes. And then something I didn't notice watching this the first time, you can see her in the background of a couple shots where you're not necessarily supposed to on the first go around. Like, what can you tell me about visually representing Krista in this movie? Because it's very eerie and very interesting.
No, that's it was always planned as such, and I thought it was interesting because how far do you push it, in the sense is because you can oversee it. I love the sequence in her in-town studio, when you just about make her out, and you go, and you almost think, was there somebody? And then Cate is at the piano, and she does this, like she like what she does, these little gestures. We really pushed that, and it is obviously, it's probably the most say risky decisions, because you can really miss it, but it was just part of the fun to really play this on a more subconscious level.
Yeah, that's what I think is the richness of the movie. Watching it again yesterday, so many things I noticed the second time around that I didn't notice the first time. Do you have a favorite memory of your experience working on Tar? Is there like a moment with Todd Field, Cate Blanchett, a shot you achieved outside of maybe the Juilliard moment? Like what was kind of your favorite moment on the set of this movie?
Well, that's a beautiful question, but it's hard to answer. There's two things come to my mind. Yesterday, I did a little panel for the Academy with them, and obviously, you know, they have been giving a lot of interviews, so they are like, you know, like a couple. They just go, you know, and Todd is a writer and he speaks very eloquently, and Cate, you know, has done these things for 30 years. And I just caught myself sitting there and just enjoying listening to them. And that brought back memories, because it was just beautiful to be working alongside them at this level of creative discussion. That's something that I will always remember. So that's like more a general feeling. There was a peculiar situation when we shot the last shot. So the last shot of the film was, you know, which is this tracking shot,
right,
which was already scripted. And I always thought it's a lovely idea to turn the mirror almost around, you know, to actually ask us what's our costume, you know, what we are wearing, but to do that with a very humorous and warm, with a little twinkle in the eye, you know. So, and by chance, it happened to be the last shot of the shoot. Normally, you try to shoot the beginning and the end. At least I try to shoot it in the middle when everybody is at their peak.
Right.
You know, you don't want to start, you know, do the first scene on the first day. And normally, I would say you don't want to do the last shot on the last day. But it just happened to be this way. And we were out in Southeast Asia, and it was like, you know, after all the focus and the restraint and all the gray winter light, it was obviously tremendously invigorating to be out in the heat and the cacophony of color, you know. And actually the film really shifts gear when it gets to Asia. So we had experienced beautiful, I think we were there for probably 10 days, 5 shooting days, 5 prep days or something like that. And it then happened to be that this would be the last and final shot. We had shot the orchestra out. We had shot her out. She had gone away into de-dress and makeup and costume, because she was meant to fly out immediately, because she had some thing, I think, because the Guillermo del Toro film started or something.
Right.
So we were setting up this tracking shot, and people were, because it was so hot and it was, you know, the costumes were so big, people were nodding away. So we had to shoot this a few times to get the audience with the focus, because Todd was saying, eyes open, nobody blinks, you know. And Cate came down and sat next to us. And I remember that it was the first time that she was out of character for me, really. Because I'd only seen her as Lydia Tarr, you know.
Yeah.
Whenever she came on, she was full on. She was always doing something, you know. Even when she wasn't on camera, she would, if there was a piano in the room, she would practice the piano. So she just sat there relaxed, and then we finally got the shot, and you know, everybody was just super jubilant. I just yelled out, you know, it was like such a relief. It's you know, all the pressure goes. So Todd and I, you know, really embraced, and suddenly all the extras stood up. And obviously they must have been completely oblivious, because they were just there for the day, and they all applauded. And that was a surreal moment. I still to this day don't know why they did this, but it was that was a very special moment, you know, when we did that.
What a fantastic way to end your time on this movie, to have a standing ovation. That must have felt like
it was
great,
you know. And yeah, and it was good to end it there as well, you know. It was I really enjoy it. Always felt a bit, you know, when reading, it almost felt like something that was added to it. You could have probably, you know, ended the film earlier. And in a reading experience, you would have been maybe, oh, do we really need this? You know, you could have seen that in another universe, somebody would have said, oh, let's save some money, let's not go there, and end with her, you know, on a high note. but I feel it's really giving the film another dimension. And I also felt something that Todd would say at times, you know, to some people this ending is like a defeat, but maybe as a person she's actually liberated, because she can, you know, devote herself emotionally again to that what she likes, and she, you know, enjoys his music without the entire structure around her that has made also, you know, maybe made her into what she was, you know. So for some people it's also a happy end.
Right. So as we wrap up here, Florian, again, I just want to say congratulations on, you know, all of the attention you've gotten for this movie. You've gotten nominated at Critics' Choice, Film Independent Spirit. You've previously won. You've won an Emmy. You've won a BAFTA, right? You've won an ASC, and now you're nominated for an Oscar. Yeah, those were for your beautiful work on Great Expectations, which was fantastic. And now you're nominated for your first Oscar. Like, what would it mean to you to actually win an Academy Award on March 12th?
I can't think about it, man. Sure, I mean, oh God. No, I won't win. I won't win.
You don't think so?
Being nominated is winning enough, you know.
Right.
I am fortunate enough they will actually let me leave here, so because we will still be in production, so it will be a bit of a crazy travel. You know, Darius Conji and Roger Deakins, who are both nominated as well, you know, they have been beacons of light for me, like since film school, really, you know. And the fact that I have that that I can say this sentence, that I will be nominated with them and they were beacons of light since film school, you know, that's in itself already, you know, a reality that's a little bit too big for my head to really compute. But you know, I mean, you know, who knows? Although in all seriousness, what I find really rewarding is when the cinema that really made me fall in love with cinema was a cinema that allowed questions. You know, I love Antonioni, for example. That was the stuff that took us through film school. You know, those films of the 70s, of the 80s, and where you could sit and you go like, whoa. And that you were allowed to ask a question, and you had the feeling you were not dumb and you didn't understand, but that was part of, you know, with Antonioni, maybe answering a question didn't make sense because even the question would go away. You know, it was like cinema as a place where you could really inquire. That was my one of the forces that drove me to it, and that. I knew that we were making something like this, but I was not sure if it would still resonate with people. And I think that, you know, you take pleasure in rewatching it, and the way that you've been, you know, showing your excitement about it and many reactions I had, I would say, yes, that, you know, there is a place for this cinema, even though we all like spectacle. And I like spectacle at times as well. There's also the audiences are super mature and super intelligent, and they can follow almost anything, you know. So that is actually the real beauty of all this.
Well, I think that is a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much for being on my YouTube channel today, Florian. I think your work on this film is exquisite. I'm so happy you were recognized with an Oscar nomination, your very first Oscar nomination, and I hope you have a great time at the Oscars on Sunday, March 12th.
Oh God. I will try to. But thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all your excitement and your interest. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.